Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, today I am going to talk about capitalism, about which I had talked about yesterday. Yesterday, when I was talking about the features of capitalism, I mentioned especially the institutions of capitalism as well as the principle of instrumental rationality that drives capitalism. Now, what has happened with capitalism today is that it has completely morphed. Today's capitalism does not have any resemblance to the capitalism that was there in the 20th century. Why has this happened? Because now capitalism has gone global. In a way, capitalism has actually transformed itself into a different structure, although it remains dominated by the by capital, and it serves the purpose of capital accumulation even today. I think there may be a time when the accumulation of capital has to come to an end, but that time is being extended, stretched out. There are people who say that capitalism is driven by capital and that this will ultimately has to collapse, but the structure of capitalism is such that the institutions of capitalism is such that these institutions are adapting themselves or becoming flexible to adapt themselves to the changing environment of capitalism, so that it is extending the role of accumulation of capital. So, how is this happening? To talk about how this is happening, I am going to say that capitalism has become a worldwide phenomenon, has become a global phenomenon. Some people can object and say that capitalism was always from its birth global, but today the global capitalism has become more dense. They say that now today globalization has packed the whole world into a village, into a global village. Similarly, capitalism, economic processes generated by capitalism are gradually, they are worldwide, they are gradually condensing, they are becoming denser and denser, and therefore the pressure of capital is becoming greater and greater on the entire global and the societies and nation states. So this is what I mean by capitalism going global. And I also mentioned, it's worth repeating, that this is the capitalism, we talk about capitalism because this is the era in which of the dominance of capital. We are all servants of capital. What do you mean by being servants of capital? This means that we are all serving the purpose of capital accumulation. The more we accumulate capital, all our social structures and institutions are promoting one way or the other in the process of accumulating more and more capital. This being the case, What is the difference today between the morphed capitalism today and the older version of capitalism? This is what I want to talk about. One, this has resulted in deterritorialization of capital. What do I mean by this deterritorialization of capital? I mean by deterritorialization, capital has taken wings. It can fly to any part of the world. What do I mean by that? Earlier in the 20th century, of course, things were changing towards the end of the 20th century. Earlier in the 20th century, what used to happen was that many of the, it was based on, capitalism was based on massive manufacturing industries, huge factories used to, especially in the 50s and 60s, from the 40s to the 60s. Actually, it all began with the Ford Motor Company which started manufacturing Ford cars on a very large scale, because large scale production turns out to be always cheaper, because on the large scale you can, as I was saying yesterday, on a large scale when you are producing goods, then the production, the costs of production will go down. I was saying that. So capital, factories, modes of production was such that you needed huge factories to produce produce cars and other items on a large scale. Today, what I mean by capital getting deterritorialized is that because of advances in rapid advances in transport technology, and because of the fact that there are rapid advances in computerization, you have made machines which are operated under computerized control and so on. What has happened is capital can also fly, capital can also move. Machines can be dismantled easily and can be taken from one place to another. This is one thing that has happened due to in this century, deterritorialization. It's actually happening in the towards the end of the last century. The trend has become much stronger today. So capital can move. Bulky machines can be moved from one place to another. I can decide to set up an airline, an aeroplane manufacturing facility today in some place called, in a place called, let's say, Bengaluru. And if I find that my company, if I find that the workers in my company have to be paid very high, I can easily shift it to a place in Uttar Pradesh, let's say Guna district, and then I can shift the entire plant to Guna district and I can produce my cars there. So this is what has happened, deterritorialization of capital. Deterritorialization of capital ensures that bulky machines can move, capital can move from one place to another easily, fly actually. But deterritorialization has also taken another form. This is almost can be compared to magic. Why do I say this can be compared to magic? This is because capital has been dominated by financialization. This is the most important feature of capitalism today. Capital is, when we talk about capital, we are mostly talking of finance capital. We are mostly talking about finance capital. what is this finance capital? Finance capital is the capital that, for instance, let's say I have about 5 crores of rupees to invest. All right, I have 5 crores of rupees to invest. What I can do is to open if I have if I want to invest, what are my opportunities? I can invest in a company, I can start a company with this 5 crores, a small company, a small medium enterprise, and I can also ask for loans from the government, and I can buy the machinery, and let's say I want to produce this thing, mobile phones, so I can produce it, all right, by getting on these 5 crores, getting loans of around 40 crores from the government, all right. I can set up a mobile phone manufacturing company, all right. Here, when I set up the mobile phone manufacturing company, I am buying the machinery, I am buying the raw material, all things which are concretely tangible goods, tangible things I have to buy. The machinery are tangible, the plastic material I get is tangible, and so on and so forth. And the components I get are tangible, and so on and so forth. Of course, in the case of mobile phone manufacturing companies, I also need computer programs to make the computer work. But, all right, that computer programs are not tangible. But anyway, most of these items that I require, maybe computer programs may be much more expensive, but on the whole, I am dealing with tangible capital goods, right, for production. But, the option that I have, instead of doing this, instead of using my 5 crores of rupees to produce mobile phones and to make profits, if I start investing, there's a gestation period of 1 year or 1.5 years, depending on different administrative regimes, the licenses that I have to get for water, electricity, and for starting other things, municipal licenses, and so on and so forth. Company law, I have to register myself with the company law board, and so on and so forth. All this will take some time. Registrar of companies have to get registered and all that. It takes some time, and then I'll start producing. In the beginning, I may suffer some losses. So let's say it takes about 5 years for me to start realizing profit. All right. But then, if I suppose I say that, look, I'm old, I can't, in 5 years I don't know whether I'll be alive. So I want to, make money just when I'm, within the next 5 years. So is there an option? Of course, there's an option. What I do is, there is I hear there is a company which is producing cars at a which is producing cars, all right? And this company is prospering, is making lots of profits. So I can do one thing, instead of investing these 5 crores of rupees in producing cars, I can buy the shares of that company. If it's already a going concern, that company, all right, that car manufacturing company, all that I have to do is to use my 5 crores of rupees to buy the shares of that company in the market, in the stock exchange. although nowadays I can do is sitting at my computer, I can buy these 5 crores rupees worth of shares. And if I am clever operator, if I know, if I studied the movement of this shares of this company, and also I have compared the shares of the way this company is performing vis-a-vis other companies and so on, maybe, who knows, the company's stock may go up by 400%, 500%, or even if it goes doubles, it can happen within 6 months, or let's say 1 year. Instead of my 5 crore rupee worth of shares will end up giving me, let us be conservative, will give me 9 crores. Instead of 5, I will have 9 crores, and that means my profit is 4 crores. All right, I have made 4 crores of profit. All right, and imagine, what have I done? I have not produced anything. All right, I have just used information to bring to my bank account 4 crores of rupees. Of course, I have to pay income tax and all that. That's the net of income tax. Maybe I'll get 2.5 crores. All right, even with that I'll be happy. All right, because my 5 crores has produced nearly 50% interest within 6 months, 50% profit within 6 months. That's a huge amount. All right, so it is possible. That's why I think Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani, Mr. Mukesh and Anil Ambani's father became very popular with the middle classes, because he showed us the value of investing, especially middle class Indians, the value of investing in shares and so on, because whatever these shareholders had invested, within several months, they started reaping profits, because actually they were riding on the shoulders of Dhirubhai Ambani. They trusted Dhirubhai Ambani's market intelligence, and because of that, they invested heavily in Dhirubhai Ambani's ventures, and they made huge profits. Actually, more and more, what is happening in this world today is that that capital, more and more of the world's capital is being diverted to this share market. All right, why is that happening? Because more and more of the people in the world who have these investable resources are people like me. What do you mean? That I'm comparing them with myself. Well, I'm a retiree. I've retired from active service, and I have, because of my retirement benefits, I have a capital stock, an amount of money. I am looking for, I don't want to take, I don't have the energy and the health and the knowledge and the skill. My skill is not my, limbs are not as active as, they were before, and so on. Therefore, to invest, to actually invest in a, to actually, use my surplus money that I have in actually producing in an enterprise becomes very difficult for me. Therefore, just like me, there are so many people who want to use their funds to who want to buy shares in the share market, and especially in the Western countries, in America and all that, the population is aging population. Aging populations we have, because a larger and larger proportion, a large proportion of the population of America is above the age of 75 years, 70 years, all right, seniors, sorry, 70 years, above the age of 70 years. So, they have their lifetime's earnings, and what do? They want to, they look for an intermediary who knows the market and who can invest in the market, who knows the share market and who can invest in the market and can give them a fairly good return on their investments, financial investments. So, what happens is that these are called pension funds, all right, pension funds. So, pension funds are floating all over the world, and there are agents, middlemen, of course, and also bankers who say we will give you a minimum return of 25%, don't worry, we will invest for you in companies. And the moment we know, we have experts who are studying the markets, and the moment we know that one company is doing badly, then we'll shift your investments to other companies and so on. No, you don't have to worry about it. We will give you a guaranteed rate of return of 25%. This in India also, these mutual funds are all about are also like pension funds. The mutual fund companies invest on your behalf in different in the shares and of different companies. They can also give part of your funds to start for people who are going to start up new business ventures, all right. They can also give loans to some companies, all right, hoping that these will be loans. Once an entrepreneur takes a loan, first of all, whenever he has to start paying back the loan at a given rate of interest, and the claim of the lender is the first priority that the enterprise owner has to fulfill, right? So, there is a guarantee, there is a security that the money that you have lent, will come back. So, some people may invest in the what's called the bond market, all right, which bond markets are actually bonds, are actually loans loan money given to which are loans floating in the market as paper, as papers. For instance, you can buy government bonds. Government says that when you buy the bond from a government, they will say that they will give you 10% interest, all right, and they will say that after 10 years, we will give you have invested 1 lakh of rupees, we will give you after 10 years 4 lakhs of rupees. You are happy? Actually, you have lent the money to the government. So, these agents also do this kind of thing. They lend money to other enterprises. Maybe they also purchase government bonds and so on and so forth. Now, anyway, what is happening? Do you notice in this with the growth of financial capital is that financial intermediaries, all right, are becoming important between the person who has the liquid funds and the industries which are interested in using those funds for various production activities, all right. So, that is one, all right. And I want to mention in this case, very quickly I want to mention that production is also not about tangible goods. I was talking about computer programs, all right. Computer programs are not are actually knowledge based, is knowledge based this thing. It's full of a particular computer language, a code that requires not of course it requires computers, but ultimately when you buy a program to be installed in a car, or when you buy a when you buy a computer, and with it you are buying a program for all all of us buy Microsoft programs. What we are actually doing is we are we are using the code that that company has developed in our computer, and we are paying for it. So today most of the production in any, whether it is now you have a now the world has changed so much. Now our automobiles have become autonomous. There are many people, especially Tesla, has started manufacturing. He is an entrepreneur. He has started already manufacturing cars which are completely, which are driverless cars. They are called autonomous cars. They know once they study their computers, which are installed in the car, which with sensors, which sort of study the environment in which the car is going. They know, they can see what are the obstacles that are ahead of the car, what cars are coming behind. They observe all the rules. They know where to stop at signals, traffic lights, and so on. So, the car is actually become a moving computer, all right, with lots of programs. So, with lots of computer programs. So, what has happened as a consequence is that most of the tangible, nowadays most of our production is concentrated in the production of knowledge, because computer, you see, for instance, let me take the case of Microsoft, all right. Microsoft has this MS-DOS program, all right. It is actually selling us, when we buy MS Office for our word processing purposes, for writing our papers, for doing PPT presentations, and so on. What we are doing is that the Microsoft Office program has a patent, has taken a patent. Now the Microsoft Office program cannot be replicated by others. So we are actually, because we are using that patent, we are paying a rent to that. We are buying one version of the patent for us to work in the on our computers. So this is actually we are buying knowledge, all right. Similarly, there are several nowadays, on the television you will see lots of people who say that there are travel agents, very famous, who help you buy air tickets, train tickets, bus tickets, all right, and so on, because they have installed computer programs. Similarly, Uber and Ola, taxi services. Now these taxi services not only cater to your transport requirements, now they also cater to your eating requirements. If you want to get food from a particular restaurant, they will, all that you have to do is to mention which restaurant and which type you get the menu, and you can choose the menu from there, and it will come to your home in 5 minutes. So these actually what's happening today is that the major bulk of the economy is being contributed by knowledge and by services, all right. Services and knowledge, all right, rule the day today, all right. Production of services and knowledge production rule the market today. It's no longer the case that manufactured goods like chairs, like automobiles, like televisions, all right, these we are still producing them. Maybe we are producing more of these televisions, more of these cameras, more of these bicycles, all right, more of the pens, all right, more of various tools we require, all right, for hand tools we require more of bulbs and all that, but the proportion of these goods, tangible goods that are producing, in the entire economy is going down, and services have become more prominent. Earlier, so that what is happening is, many economists say that earlier we were in the era of when before economic growth, this rapid economic growth that has engulfed the world has taken over. Earlier, in the beginning, the economy, most of the production of the economy was in the agriculture and mining and all that sector. All right, this is called the primary sector. All right. Now, when the economy starts growing, the manufacturing sector using machines, all right, manufacturing sector becomes dominant. This is called the secondary sector. And the services sector becomes, at a later stage of economic growth, services space sector becomes dominant. This is called the tertiary sector. Okay. Now the services sectors, knowledge sector has become dominant. This is this step that is this services sector dominance is very interesting, is a very significant feature of modern capitalism. Earlier it was the manufacturing sector which was significant. Why is it significant? Well, you had the manufacturing sector, workers were important. Workers who had skills to work with machines had become a very significant class in societies. Today, more than workers, people who are service providers have become important, who offer services, who use their knowledge to come and repair your computers, all right, who have these servicing skills, all right, who can repair your washing machines, refrigerator. All these people have become very significant. Service providers have become more significant than actual workers who work in factories, the working class. All right. Now, we actually in factories also, since most of the production is done by computers, you don't require so many workers. So, workers have sort of receded to the background. They are there, but they have receded to the background. And in India, by the way, what I want to say is that in India, manufacturing sector was supposed to become dominant at a particular phase of our economy, of our economic growth. But for a variety of reasons that didn't happen. Now, all of a sudden what we find is services sector, the tertiary sector has become the more dominant sector without allowing the manufacturing sector, the secondary sector, to become dominant, to contribute a greater part of the income that the country produces, that the Indian economy produces. Now, there is another thing that's happening. I was talking about deterritorialization of capital. Along with it, there is also, the diasporas. Diasporas refer to flows of people migrating from one country to another, one place to another. This has become dominant. Why is it the case why is it become dominant? This is also because of the aging population in Europe and America. Because of the aging population, old people require nursing care, they require all kinds of services. And because old people in America, the proportion of old people in America is larger than the younger people, so you require to produce various goods and services in their economy, there are not enough workers. All right. So you have to import, you have to get people to migrate to work in your in your house building industry, in your electricity, generating industries and so on. And also in your hospitals, you require more hospitals who take care of aged people, and therefore you need nurses and doctors and so on. And where do you have these nurses and doctors when in America the younger people cannot, the younger age population cannot serve the demands of the older, of the society. Therefore, you get migrant workers. Also, it's not as if these advanced economies have open doors. They are very, very strict. They want you to take visas. They will ask you to get out after some time, after your visa period is expired and so on. They are very strict about it. And of course, today, because of disturbances or in several parts of the world, there are also refugee flows. So these are diasporas that people are moving from one place to another. So there has been a deterritorialization. People are not sticking to one place. People as well as capital are in the move. This is one thing. And then I said financial capital dominates the scene. That means there are several intermediaries that have become, have become important. I have to mention this particular thing in slightly greater detail. I will do that. What I mean by this is that, you see, I said I'll buy shares. All right. There are intermediaries who who invest my money in buying shares. Let's say a bank officer is recruited to on my behalf to invest in various shares I want. Now the bank wants to be sure that the investment it's making is in the right direction. So there are intermediaries to these banks who advise. All right, they what happens is the shares you are buying shares. The bank has has bought lots of shares of several companies in the automotive sector. Now the bank is afraid the automotive shares may go down. The value of these shares may go down in the market because everyone is switching to electric cars. All right, and everyone is switching to to let's say autonomous cars. Therefore, there will be the traditional car making companies that are there will start losing out. So what they do is that there is another derivative market. All right, derivative market. All right, which buys these shares. You see, if a company has, let's say, 1,000 shares in the Tatas, all right, in the Tatas motor company, if a company has 1,000 shares, all right, it says that look, if the share value, if it has 1,000 shares, then there are intermediaries in the market who say that look, I will guarantee you a return of 10% on your shares. All right. So if your shares are worth 10 crores rupees, I will tell you next year I will give you I'll guarantee you a return of 1 crore on your shares. All right. So if he says that, all that he says is he promises to pay a a definite amount of 1 crore, or he will say that I will buy the shares, I will buy your shares on a particular date. All right, on next year on this particular date at 11 crores of rupees. All right. Now all that he just makes a promise. It's just a promise. He says I will buy your shares at 11 crores of rupees. I will buy your 1,000 shares at 11 crores of rupees. All right. Now, in the market, if the share value has come down to only 8 crores of rupees, all right, on that particular day, the person who has promised will give him just 3 crores of rupees that, in the market share value is 8 crores, I will give you 3 crores of rupees, all right. So, it will be 11 crores, all right. So, he does not have to do anything, he just has to give you a check for 3 crores. If in the market the share value goes up to 14 crores, all right, then the then this banker who has entered into this promissory arrangement, he will pay him 3 crores. So, what happens? Nothing, not even share papers are transferred. There are only promises that are promissory promises that are traded. Promise that, so one person is betting on the future, the other person is betting, is saying that the future may be bleak, all right, you are betting on the future, all right. So, financial market also involves these kinds of transactions, and what happens is that if you combine the shares of different companies and make them into packets, all right, and then you say this entire amount is worth, it will be worth so much, all right. Then what you are actually doing is that this is you are producing a new financial product, all right, of the shares, all right. These are called derivatives. Now, not only the share market has become important, now in the futures market, not only the share market has become important, the derivative markets have also become important, and the trend of the various derivatives also becoming important. So, actually what is actually happening is that promises are being traded. Financial capital makes that, the dominance of financial capital implies that, promises, word of mouth, words about how much you pay, in the future, that is becoming more important today to make profits. So, this means what? It's almost magical. If you want to make money, all right, you turn to the financial market, and if you are lucky, if you are met the right person, a right investor, a smart investor, you become you can make a killing. Almost it's like, the magicians do this, no? They show you a hat, there are no rabbits in it, and then after some time they cover it up with some piece of cloth, and then they distract you, they make all kinds of movements, and then they take out the cover of the hat, and then out of the hat they take out rabbits. It's almost magical. The profits that you get, it may also be magical. Or similarly, the magicians put the rabbits in the hat, cover it up with a sheet of paper, and then take out the sheet of paper after some time, and then they turn over the hat, and there is no rabbit at all. That can also happen. In present day economy, making profits is like, is almost like a magician's trick. All right, and there are some magicians who have become very famous because they have made our, he is a product of IIT, IIT Delhi, Rajat Mehta, who was a financial, who became very famous. He was consultant to several top ranking companies in the world, financial companies in the world. And he was an expert in making profit, in showing you how to make profits. And his words, were people, reporters used to hang on to his sound bites so that to read the markets. If he says that today the electronics goods industry will be making huge profits, then everyone will turn to the to buy the shares and the derivatives in the electronics goods industries. So they become heroes. They're the new heroes of capitalism. Of course, sometimes they can land up. They can their wisdom can run out, and they may land you all in trouble. That can also happen, because you can't take anybody's word for granted. That's why can't you take anybody's word for granted? Remember, I mentioned that this is the age of what shall I say, instrumental capitalism. You don't know when instrumental rationality. You don't know, somebody is assuring you that he will make you profit, he will make profits for you, and he shows that in my past I have done that. He shows you a record, he shows you his record. I have been so successful, you have to trust me. You are trusting him actually. All right. Now, who knows, at one particular moment in time, he may decide to, cheat you because he'll make more money. That can happen. That can happen. There are many, he can turn out to be a con man. All right. There are so many incidents of people who have, in whom you have trusted, turning out, they, especially in these, I'll give you examples. For instance, top executives in a company, they can, although the company may be making losses, they may, sort of cook up figures. They can manage figures in such a way that this, to show that this particular company is making huge profits, especially in corporations which have interlocking directorships. If let's say the one company, it has companies, one particular group of companies, it has invested in cars, it has invested in televisions, it has invested in producing computer programs, and it has invested in buying tobacco, lots of, there are 4 different companies it has. All right. Now, it knows that a particular company, let's say it's it's cigarettes making company, is undergoing losses. It can, you can use accountants to show that this company is making profits, and you can transfer surreptitiously funds from the other profit making companies that you have to show that this company, account wise, in terms of financial accounts, it is making profits. All right. It is having good returns. And why do they do that? So that the share value, the price of your shares, your 10 rupee shares, maybe you can push your 10 rupee shares to the price of 10 rupee shares to 100 rupees, let's say, by doing this financial jugglery. And then one particular moment you can decide, well, this is enough. The market will not take, if I push more, the price may come down. So this is the time for me to sell. So you sell all your the shares that you have possessed in the market, and you make a big killing. Imagine if your 10 rupee shares are sold at 100 rupees or 1000 rupees, as in the case of several of these, computer giants. All right. If you sell it, you make a huge killing. And if nowadays there is the practice of companies rewarding their executives with stock options, they'll give them 5% of the shares of the company. So the executives have the incentive to do this kind of thing, to fudge accounts, to sell, to shoot up, to create a bubble in the market for that particular share, so that they can exit the market, and when the price of the shares go up, and make a killing. So this kind of thing also happens. So what am I trying to say? I am trying to say that instrumental rationality has taken over so much, has taken over the capitalism so much that that the old world trust can be breached. You see, there are institutions, all right. The government is supposed to have institutions to monitor and regulate these companies. We have the Companies Act, in India, which says which has made rules about the director, who are the directors of the company. You can't have family members as directors of your company. You should have some outside experts, and it specifies the roles of the directors of the company. It also says that the company has to every year, every quarter now, give its returns, so that its balance sheets where where the profit and the loss you have made can be read. Financial experts can assess it, and the reports that you give should be vetted by by authorized auditors who have been authorized, and also now there are rules of bankruptcy. If you can't if you make losses, your company can be sold to your creditors. If your company can be sold, your property can be seized and sold, and therefore you will there are all these rules governing these to ensure that the company, this like in cricket matches, you have umpires and you have a referee. Like that, the government has umpires and referees to make sure. There's also the Reserve Bank to make sure that your transactions are transparent and honest transactions and so on. So the surveillance machinery has been set up by the government. All right, the government is supposed to act as a referee, but today, all right, now in the 20th century, the role of the government was confined to this refereeing to to regulate the economic activities. All right. They were saying that government is best which rules the least, which interferes the least in the market processes. That used to be the slogan today. But unfortunately, that used to be the slogan earlier, but unfortunately now things have changed. Now, capitalism is supposed to avoid interference from the government. It was socialism which was supposed to entertain the role of the government, entertain control by the government of the economic activities, because it always suspected private enterprises. It wanted the government to also produce and distribute and things in the market. Venezuela is a good example of such a socialist government, but it's in chaos now, Venezuela economy. The better example may be Cuba. According to Cuban economy, it's also controlled by the government, but there also Cuban economy is also now slowly withdrawing. You look at China. Although it's a socialist economy, now it has increased the scope of private enterprise. All right. So, but anyway, what has happened is when socialist economies have adopted or are turning towards market privatization and turning towards the dominance of the market, when this is happening in the capitalist economies, the role of the governments are intruding into the working of the economy, so much so that instead the governments have become collaborators of the private sector. Now the problem is that why have they become collaborators? You see, I will briefly mention about this. subprime crisis in America, or I'll briefly mention about our own banks, our own commercial banks in our own public sector banks. Public sector banks are facing a big crisis of non-performing assets. NPA is called, non-performing assets. Why? They, as the former chairman of the Reserve Bank, Raghuram Rajan, said, these banks used to give loans whenever there was a phone call from a politician saying, telling the manager that you give loans to this person, this person, and they used to distribute loans without checking out whether they are actually making investments, whether they are actually producing, and so on and so forth. And many of these loans have become bad loans. All right, they are not, the debtors are not able to repay the loans. Early, because they were public sector banks, the directors of the banks also did not monitor these loans because they were under political pressure. So what has happened is, ultimately what happens, the banks have made huge losses, and these huge losses are such that the government finds, for instance, look at this State Bank of India. It has, it is such a large, it has so many branches, all right, all over the country, and so many people have made their deposits. If these huge amounts of debts that are there, who will pay, who will, they'll have to be recovered, they can't be recovered, then how can the banks, what will happen? The bank shares will collapse in the market. The banks, they do not have, if all the depositors go to the bank and ask them to return the deposit they make, the bank may collapse. So, and then if the banks collapse, so many of these people, of ordinary citizens, middle class, low middle class citizens who have invested the money, who have put their money in the banks because they are government banks, they will suffer. Their entire savings, especially fixed deposits, their entire savings may be wiped out. So what the government does is, okay, we can't afford this banks to, they are too big, we can't afford this bank to collapse, so we will give from the budget, we will give 5,000 crores to these banks. So what has happened is, the government, instead of becoming referee, are actually not even collaborators. They have colluding with economic enterprises, all right, and actually they are encouraging them to cheat the public, all right. So this is another feature of modern capitalism. This is another thing that I want to emphasize. This means what? Corruption, has exploded. Corruption has ballooned. Nowadays, you have various agencies that have come up to make sure that the ill-gotten money can be kept, it can be hidden effectively by, it can be hidden so effectively that it's very difficult, very, very difficult for the governments to trace where you have done that. So corruption has become a major problem in the modern world. Thank you.